My wife cheated with her boss, and my daughters covered for her the betrayal that shattered my family. My wife betrayed me with her boss, and to make things worse, my own daughters protected her the entire time. That's when I decided to hand her the divorce papers, cut them out of any inheritance, and rewrite my will. Melanie, my wife, and I spent nearly 3 decades together. Our relationship began when she was 19 and I was 22. Back then, we had nothing. We lived in a small, run-down apartment that reeked of the cats the previous tenants had left behind, no matter how much we scrubbed. And yet, despite all of that, we were happy. We were in love and shared the same dream, to build a life together, even if it meant starting with nothing. Slowly, piece by piece, we built what was supposed to be our life together. From that union came our 2 daughters, Olivia, now 26, and Zoe, who is 24. Olivia had always been the golden child. She excelled in school, graduated with honors, and landed a solid job at a respected company. She was engaged to a man named Eason, who worked in finance. Their wedding was scheduled for October, a day I once thought would be one of my proudest as a father, never knowing the storm that would break long before then. Zoe, on the other hand, was different, more laid back, drawn to art, painting, and creativity. I always felt closer to her, my little daddy's girl. As for my marriage with Melanie, like any couple, we had our struggles. When the girls were little, money was tight. I worked in construction, sometimes holding down 2 jobs at once, while she waited tables in a restaurant and tried to finish her degree at the same time. We fought over trivial things, but we always found a way to work it out. That, to me, was what marriage meant. Sticking it out, fighting through the storms, pushing forward instead of giving up when things got hard. But in recent months, I started to feel like something wasn't right. Melanie's behavior changed. Not in huge, obvious ways, but in small, unsettling shifts that eventually became impossible to ignore. For example, almost overnight, she became obsessively protective of her phone. One time, mine had died, and I grabbed hers just to check the time, and she practically ripped it out of my hands, her tone defensive and sharp. She gave me a whole speech about privacy and boundaries. Boundaries in a marriage that had lasted nearly 30 years? It made no sense at all. Remember, if you enjoy my videos, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Another strange change was the sudden spike in dinners she started having with Olivia and Zoe. Before, they'd get together occasionally, maybe once a month, and I thought it was great. I loved seeing them close, laughing together, enjoying each other's company. But suddenly, they were meeting every 2 weeks, sometimes even more often. Whenever I asked what they had done or where they had gone, the answers were clipped and evasive. Just dinner, just catching up. In the past, Melanie would come home full of anecdotes, laughing about funny stories or gossiping about the little things. That stopped suddenly, without me even noticing at first. About 6 months ago, I came home earlier than expected from a business trip because a meeting with a client had been canceled. I managed to catch an earlier flight, so I arrived without telling anyone. When I walked in, I found Melanie on the phone, but she hung up the moment she saw me. She said it was Olivia, but when I asked what they had been talking about, she got nervous and changed the subject almost immediately. Later, I walked into the kitchen and overheard Zoe whispering something to Melanie. I didn't catch the full sentence, just a fragment. Do you think he's starting to suspect? The way they both snapped their heads toward me, almost in sync, told me everything I needed to know. Melanie rushed to say it was just some plan they had, and Zoe quickly jumped in with, "It's a surprise, you'll find out soon." I told myself maybe they were planning something for my birthday, which was coming up back then. But more and more little signs began to stack up. One night, Melanie came home with a noticeable tan. I frowned. A tan? In Ohio? In February? There was a split second of hesitation on her face, just a flicker, but it was enough for me to feel that something was off. Olivia tried to smooth things over, gave a nervous laugh, and said they had gone to a tanning salon together before her mother traveled. It sounded improvised, but I pretended not to push it. Still, it added to the growing list of details that gnawed at me. Melanie's wardrobe started changing. She began buying new clothes, wearing makeup more often, and she even joined a gym, attending 3 times a week without fail. As if that wasn't enough, she suddenly appeared with a silver bracelet that she claimed she had bought for herself as a gift for a professional achievement. The piece was clearly expensive. When I asked about the price, she snapped, accusing me of never caring about her little indulgences. That wasn't true. I had always told her if she liked something and we could afford it, she should buy it. Still, I tried to convince myself I was overthinking. I told myself maybe this was all part of that so-called empty nest syndrome, now that our daughters no longer lived with us. After 3 decades together, things naturally shift, right? At least, that's what I wanted to believe. I didn't want to become that jealous, controlling husband who flips out just because his wife changes her hair or spends more time with the kids. That was never who I was. I had always trusted Melanie completely. But there was this gut feeling, a tight knot in my stomach that told me something was very wrong. It was like the signs were right in front of me, and I was deliberately refusing to see them. And then, one random Tuesday, everything collapsed. That Tuesday, I was at work, supervising a construction site like any other day. During my lunch break, I pulled out my phone to check my email. I was scrolling through the usual flood of messages that didn't really need my attention when one subject line froze me cold. Your wife is cheating on you. My first reaction was to think it was spam, like one of those scams claiming to be from some Nigerian prince. But something about it made me open it anyway. The message was short and direct. Melanie has been having an affair with her boss, Richard, for over a year. Everyone at the office knows, except you. I thought you deserved to know. Attached to the email was a video. I sat frozen in my truck, staring at the screen, my thumb hovering over the play button. Part of me wanted to delete it immediately, as if ignoring it would somehow make it untrue. But another part of me needed to see it, needed to know the truth, no matter how much it hurt. Finally, I took a deep breath and hit play. The footage looked like it had been recorded during a company Christmas party. Through the crowd, I spotted Melanie, sitting way too close to Richard. They were leaning in, whispering in a way that was far too intimate to be mistaken for casual conversation. Their body language said everything their words didn't. Suddenly, the camera shifted to a drunk woman I vaguely recognized from picking Melanie up at work a few times. Slurring her words, she asked, "Isn't that her husband?" The person filming replied, "No, I'm just recording the party." The woman laughed and said, "Well, let me tell you something. Everybody here knows Melanie and Richard have been seeing each other for about a year now. They think they're discreet, but it's obvious to anyone." Her laughter rang out, and she added, "Business trips together, lunches where they disappear for hours, and that silver bracelet she's always showing off. Richard gave her that. The same bracelet Melanie swore she had bought for herself as a reward for her professional achievement." In that moment, it felt like the ground disappeared beneath me. The video ended, and I sat there, trembling, breathing heavily, unable to move. My gut told me who had probably sent the email. Vanessa, a co-worker of Melanie's who had always clashed with her after Melanie got the promotion Vanessa wanted. I wanted to believe this was just a bitter rumor. But the more I replayed the last few months in my head, the girls' nights, the evasive answers, the bracelet, the sudden secrecy, the more everything fit together. After watching that video, I couldn't bring myself to go back to the site. My hand shook so badly I could barely hold my phone. I told my foreman I had a family emergency and left. I couldn't go home. Not yet. Instead, I drove to my buddy Dave's house. When he opened the door and saw my face, he knew something was wrong immediately. I didn't even say a word. I just handed him my phone with the video still playing. He watched in silence. When it ended, he looked up at me in shock. "Jesus, man, what are you going to do?" The truth was I didn't know. Part of me wanted to storm home and confront Melanie, screaming and demanding answers. But another part of me needed more proof. The video could be dismissed as gossip, hearsay, and I didn't want to blow up a 30-year marriage on office rumors, no matter how damning they seemed. That night, I crashed on Dave's couch. I texted Melanie, saying I had an emergency at a work site and would be gone for a couple of days. Her reply chilled me. "Okay, take care." That was it. No questions, no concern, no suspicion. Just cold indifference. It made me sick. The next evening, Melanie texted me, saying she was heading out for her usual dinner with the girls. She added at the end, "Don't wait up." She grabbed her coat and left like it was just another ordinary night. As soon as she was gone, I slipped out of Dave's house and drove to the restaurant where she usually met Olivia and Zoe. I parked across the street, my stomach in knots, and waited. About 20 minutes later, I saw my daughters walk in and sit at their usual table. But there was no sign of Melanie. My throat tightened. I pulled out my phone and sent Olivia a message. "Hey, is Mom there yet?" She replied within seconds. "Yeah, she's here." "What?" I just stared at the screen, my pulse hammering. They were lying to me. My daughters, my own flesh and blood, were covering for her. Not only was Melanie betraying me, but Olivia and Zoe were actively helping her hide it. I opened the family locator app we'd installed on all our phones years ago for safety. Her location wasn't anywhere near the restaurant. Instead, the little dot was across town at an upscale Italian restaurant. My chest tightened as I drove there, already knowing what I was going to see but still dreading it. And there she was. Through the restaurant window, I saw Melanie sitting far too close to Richard, her boss. She was leaning into him, her head resting on his shoulder, laughing freely as if she didn't have a care in the world. They weren't even trying to hide it. I felt hollow inside. Still, almost on autopilot, I pulled out my phone and began snapping photo after photo. I needed proof, something undeniable. I wasn't going to let anyone call me paranoid. With trembling hands, I opened our family group chat, the one that included Melanie, our daughters, my parents, my siblings, her relatives, everyone. I attached the photos one by one. Then I typed a single message. "Hope you're enjoying dinner with the girls, Melanie. Looks like your boss is enjoying it too." And I hit send. Within seconds, my phone exploded with notifications. Dozens of messages poured in. Shock, outrage, questions, calls. But I didn't respond. I just drove aimlessly for hours, trying to process what I just confirmed. When I finally worked up the nerve to go home, everyone was already there. Melanie, Olivia, and Zoe were sitting stiffly in the living room, waiting. Their faces were tense, anxious. "Dad, what's going on?" Olivia asked the second I walked in. "You had us worried sick." I didn't answer. I just pulled out my phone, opened the photos, and shoved the screen in Melanie's face. The color drained from her instantly. "Who sent you that?" she stammered. "I took them myself. Tonight," I said flatly. Then I opened the video from the email and hit play. The silence in that room was suffocating. Zoe broke down in tears. Olivia kept her eyes down, and Melanie just shook her head over and over, muttering, "It's not true, it's not true," as if denial could somehow erase the evidence. "How long?" I demanded, my voice cutting like steel as I stared straight at Melanie. She wouldn't answer. It was Olivia who spoke. "Dad, you have to understand." I slammed my fist on the table. "I asked you how long." I roared. Melanie whispered, barely audible. 15 months. It felt like a knife through my chest. Then I turned to Olivia and Zoe. "And you too? How long have you been lying straight to my face? How long have you been protecting her?" Zoe sobbed uncontrollably, unable to speak. Olivia, ever the composed one, murmured that they thought they were sparing me, that they believed it was for the good of the family. Rage clouded my vision. My own daughters, whom I had sacrificed everything for, had conspired with their mother to keep me in the dark. At that moment, the people in front of me no longer felt like family. They felt like strangers. I stood there, staring at them, my whole world collapsing around me. Olivia, with that calm, practiced tone she always used when trying to sound rational, finally spoke up again. "Dad, Mom was unhappy. You were always busy with work, always on job sites, traveling here and there." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own daughter was blaming me for her mother's affair. "You're seriously putting this on me?" I shot back, my voice breaking with fury. "I'm not blaming you," she insisted, "but there were reasons. You weren't emotionally present for her." I stared at her in disbelief. My daughter, the one I raised, the one I gave everything to, was standing there defending her mother's betrayal. And that justifies her sleeping with her boss? That makes it okay for you to lie to my face for over a year? I demanded. No one answered. The silence was heavy, suffocating. Finally, Melanie spoke in a thin, trembling voice. "I was going to end it. I was just waiting for the right time to tell you." The right time. I cut her off. The right time to tell me. Or the right time to leave me. She said nothing. She didn't have to. The absence of an answer was enough. You know what hurts the most? I said, my voice low, looking at each of them in turn. It's not even the affair itself, as disgusting as that is. What breaks me is the lying. The conspiracy. Sitting at the table with me every day, smiling, laughing, pretending everything was normal, while you all hid this massive secret. Do you have any idea how humiliating that is? Zoe sobbed, her face buried in her hands. We didn't want to hurt you, she managed between tears. Well, congratulations, I replied, colder than I'd ever sounded in my life. You managed to hurt me in the worst way possible. The pain in their eyes barely registered. I was too broken to feel compassion. And now what? Olivia asked, her tone practical, almost dismissive of the weight of what had just happened. Now, I said, struggling to control the rage bubbling inside me. Now I want every single one of you out of this house. Dad, please, Zoe begged through tears. We can talk about this. I know I messed up, but out. I roared, my voice echoing through the walls. All of you, out of my house. Melanie and Olivia half-dragged a sobbing Zoe to the door. When it shut behind them, I collapsed onto the couch, feeling as if my heart had been ripped out and stomped on. The silence in the house was unbearable. I got up and started pacing like a ghost through the living room. Every corner of that house was filled with memories that now felt like knives. My eyes landed on a framed family photo on the shelf. The four of us smiling on Olivia's college graduation day. I grabbed it with shaking hands and hurled it against the wall. The glass shattered across the floor. For a brief second, it gave me a hollow sense of release. But the weight of sadness returned almost immediately, heavier than before. That night, I didn't sleep. I just sat there, staring at nothing, my mind replaying every detail of the past months, trying to figure out how I missed what now seemed so obvious. My phone buzzed nonstop with calls and messages from the three of them, but I ignored them all. What could they possibly say? What excuse could make this any different? The following days blurred together. I took a leave from work, claiming a family emergency, which technically wasn't a lie. I barely ate. I barely got off the couch. I was a broken man, trapped between anger and grief. Dave stopped by several times, bringing food, trying to coax me into staying at his place so I wouldn't be alone. But I couldn't move. I had no strength. I just existed, replaying the betrayal again and again in my head. At first, Melanie's messages were pleading, I'm so sorry. Please, let me explain. I never meant to hurt you. Then they shifted into scolding. You're acting like a child. We need to talk like adults. Finally, they turned manipulative. I'm worried about you. Just tell me you're okay. I didn't reply to a single one. In my eyes, Melanie was already gone. 30 years of effort, sacrifice, and loyalty flushed down the drain for a cheap affair. Fine. That was her choice. She could have her boss. But what gutted me the most wasn't Melanie. It was Olivia and Zoe. My own daughters. The girls I raised, protected, and poured everything into. They hadn't just known about the affair. They had helped her hide it. They had looked me straight in the eye, time after time, and lied to me. That betrayal cut deeper than anything Melanie had done. One day, Olivia texted me, What you're doing is unfair to everyone. When you're ready to talk like an adult, let me know. The arrogance in those words made my blood boil. As if I were the problem. As if the one betrayed needed to be scolded into acting mature. I wanted to hurl my phone across the room. Zoe was different. She called constantly, crying, leaving voicemails between sobs. Dad, please talk to me. I only wanted to keep the family together. Mom begged me not to say anything because she said if you found out, you'd leave and everything would fall apart. Please forgive me. Don't hate me. Hearing her voice was the hardest. She had always been my little girl, the one who picked wildflowers for me, the one who used to fall asleep on my chest while watching cartoons. But now, when I thought of her, all I could see was the betrayal written across her face. I spent a full week in that state until Dave finally shook me awake with his words. You can't just sit here waiting for things to change on their own. You have to act, he told me firmly. And he was right. I couldn't stay paralyzed. I had to protect what little dignity I had left. Following his advice, I reached out to an attorney he recommended, Hector. I showed him the photos, the video, and laid out everything I had discovered. After reviewing it carefully, Hector said, "With this evidence, you're in a strong position, but you have to move smart." He warned me not to leave the house, since that could legally be considered abandonment in a divorce case. He also told me not to drain the joint accounts, but to transfer half of the money into a new account that Melanie couldn't access. And he instructed me to document every interaction I had with her and the girls from that point forward. I followed every piece of advice. I changed the locks, reorganized my finances, and started keeping records of everything. A few days later, Melanie showed up with Olivia, demanding I let them in to gather her things. But I was prepared. I had my phone recording as soon as I opened the door. "You'll get your stuff when my lawyer says it's time," I told them calmly, though inside I was burning with rage. That only set them off. Olivia's voice rose, sharp and full of outrage. "I'm getting married in 2 months. Are you seriously going to ruin my wedding just because Mom made a mistake?" I couldn't hold it back anymore. "A mistake? Olivia, forgetting to pay a bill is a mistake. What your mother did was a choice. Over and over again for 15 months. And what you did, covering for her, was just as bad." She snapped back, her tone dripping with self-righteousness. "I was protecting my family." "No," I said, my voice like ice. "You were protecting your mother's affair. Don't twist it." They stormed out, furious. But before leaving, Olivia had the audacity to turn back and say, "I still expect you to pay for the wedding. You promised." Her words left me stunned. The sheer entitlement was unbelievable. I closed the door without another word, my chest heaving with indignation. 2 weeks passed after that showdown, and I tried to force myself into some kind of routine. I'd wake up, drag myself to work, and return to a house that now felt like an empty shell. Dave and a few other friends tried to pull me out of my slump, inviting me to watch games, grab a beer, or just get some air. Most of the time, I didn't have the energy. I felt drained, like a hollow version of myself. Zoe, though, never stopped trying. She called, texted, even showed up at my office one afternoon. Eventually, I gave in and agreed to meet her. I wasn't ready to forgive, but I needed to hear what she had to say. We met at a small coffee shop. She walked in looking exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, her hair messy, wearing the same old hoodie she'd kept since high school. She sat down across from me, fidgeting with the sleeves of her sweater. The first words out of her mouth were, "I know nothing I say can fix this, but I really am sorry." I just stared at her, torn between anger and the love I still felt as her father. Then I asked the question that had haunted me for weeks. "Why didn't you tell me, Zoe?" She dropped her gaze, stirring her coffee even though she hadn't added sugar. Finally, she whispered, "Mom told me she was going through a midlife crisis, that she just needed to vent, that if you found out, you'd never forgive her. She swore if I told you, you'd leave and everything would fall apart." My throat tightened. "So instead of telling me the truth, you decided to destroy my trust," I said. It came out more like a sentence than a question. She flinched, as if my words physically struck her. "I know it was wrong," she whispered, tears welling up. "But you were always working, always on job sites, worried about money. Mom felt alone. I'm not saying it justifies anything. I know it doesn't. But if you had been more present, if you had talked to her more." Even in her apology, I felt blamed. The anger rose inside me again. "I broke my back working for you and your sister, for both of you. To pay for college, to give you a decent home, vacations, everything. If your mother was unhappy, she could have come to me. She could have asked for therapy. She could have asked for a divorce. But she chose to cheat, and you chose to help her." Zoe wiped her tears quickly, her hands trembling. "I'm not trying to justify it, Dad. I wanted to explain what happened. I didn't know what to think. Part of me wanted to stand up, walk away, and never look back. But as I stared at her, I still saw my little girl, the one who once thought I was her whole world. Finally, I said, "I need time. I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust you again like before." She nodded, crying quietly, but there was a flicker of relief in her eyes. At least I was talking to her. Thank you for listening, even if you can't forgive me yet, she said before leaving. I watched her walk out of the cafe, shoulders slumped, looking defeated. And I felt torn. Half of me wanted to call her back, but the other half knew I needed to protect myself from more pain. Meanwhile, the divorce was moving forward. Melanie, far from remorseful, was fighting for half of everything. The house, my retirement savings, even assets I'd built before I ever met her. She claimed she had sacrificed her career for the family, even though she had worked full-time since Zoe started school. And as if that wasn't enough, Olivia started sending me invoices related to her wedding, venue deposits, flower arrangements, even payments for her dress. The audacity was staggering. I ignored every single one, but each new message only fueled my anger further. One evening, out of the blue, I received a message from Eason, Olivia's fiancé. He asked if we could meet for coffee. At first, I hesitated. The thought of sitting down with him, given everything that was happening, made my stomach turn. But something told me to go. We met at a quiet cafe. As soon as we sat down, he leaned forward, his hands fidgeting nervously. Olivia doesn't know I reached out to you, he admitted right away. She'd lose it if she found out. But I needed to hear your side of things. She told me you're blowing everything out of proportion, that Melanie's thing with her boss was just a brief slip, and that you're refusing to pay for the wedding out of spite. I clenched my jaw, trying to keep my anger in check. Then, calmly, I told him everything. The video, the photos, the 15 months of lies, the countless times Olivia and Zoe covered for their mother, looking me straight in the eyes while fabricating excuses. By the time I finished, Eason's face was pale, his eyes wide with disbelief. I had no idea it was this bad, he murmured. Olivia painted a completely different picture. I nodded bitterly. She's been rewriting the story for months. She'll protect her mother's lies at all costs, even if it means burying the truth. Eason sat in silence for a moment, then finally said, I don't know what to think anymore. If she could lie to her own father for over a year, what else could she be hiding from me? I looked him straight in the eye. People who excuse lying end up no different than the cheaters themselves. And someone who can deceive her own father so coldly can lie to anyone. He didn't respond right away, but the look on his face told me the seed of doubt had been planted. I still didn't know what to do about my daughters. Part of me wanted to cut them off completely. Another part of me thought that was too drastic. But how could I trust them again after what they'd done? The wound was too deep. What I did know was that there was no future with Melanie. That relationship was beyond saving. So I pushed forward with the divorce, throwing myself into work just to keep my mind occupied. More than ever, I needed income flowing in, because I knew the legal process could easily leave me financially gutted if I wasn't careful. At the job site, my coworkers noticed something was off, but no one dared to ask. While I zoned out, they gave me space, and I appreciated it. But the divorce was quickly turning into a war. Melanie's lawyer tried to twist the story, painting me as a workaholic husband who had emotionally abandoned his wife, almost as if to justify her infidelity. Hector, my attorney, suggested I consider a settlement to avoid a long, draining court battle. But I refused. At that point, it wasn't about money anymore. It was about principle. A few days later, Eason reached out to me again. This time, his voice over the phone was strained, almost shaken. He asked if we could meet once more. When we sat down, he looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept in days. I confronted Olivia, he confessed. I asked her straight out about her mom's affair, about everything you told me. She exploded, accused me of betraying her, of taking your side. It turned into the worst fight we've ever had. He rubbed his temples, clearly rattled. I'm starting to doubt everything. If she could lie to you, her own father, for over a year, then what does that mean for me? How can I trust her? Remember, if you enjoy my videos, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I leaned back, studying him. You can't build a marriage on lies, I told him plainly. The moment you start justifying dishonesty, you're already doomed. Olivia chose to protect her mother's betrayal instead of doing the right thing. That says a lot about her character. His eyes dropped to the table, his hands clenched into fists. He didn't say it, but I could see the truth sinking in. Not long after that, I received an email from Olivia. It was long, pages of what she clearly thought was wisdom. She wrote about me needing to process my emotions, control my anger, and heal as a family. As if after everything they'd done, we could all just hold hands, sing songs, and pretend none of this ever happened. And at the very end of that email, she attached more invoices. Banquet deposits, florist payments, dress fittings, more expenses for her wedding that she fully expected me to pay. The audacity almost made me laugh. Almost. Zoe, on the other hand, was behaving differently. Since our talk at the coffee shop, she didn't press me constantly like before. Instead, every few days I'd get a short text from her, "Hope you're doing okay," or "Thinking of you," or simply "Love you, Dad." I rarely replied, but I didn't block her either. As angry as I was, a part of me couldn't let go of her completely. Dave remained my rock through it all. Just last weekend, he convinced me to join him and a couple of friends on a fishing trip. For the first time in weeks, I spent hours without thinking about the disaster my life had become. For a brief moment, I even felt at peace. But that peace didn't last long. A few days later, Hector called with news that sent me spiraling again. Apparently, Melanie had been planning to sell off some of the assets we still legally shared before the divorce was finalized. She had let it slip in conversation with a mutual friend who wasted no time telling me. And to top it all off, that same friend overheard that Melanie and Richard were already planning a trip to Europe as soon as this inconvenience was over. That's how she referred to it, an inconvenience. 30 years of marriage, reduced to nothing more than a temporary hassle. Hector immediately filed for an emergency injunction to freeze all marital assets. It was a small victory in a sea of losses, but it gave me some relief. Still, I remained stuck on one burning question: what to do about Olivia and Zoe. They were my daughters, and I loved them. But every time I thought about softening, I remembered how they had lied to my face over and over, giving their mother cover while she tore her family apart. The betrayal was unbearable. Just when I thought things couldn't possibly get worse, life threw another punch. I was at Hector's office, going over updates about the divorce when he leaned back in his chair and said, "You should check social media. Sometimes we find useful evidence there." I shrugged. "I don't use that stuff. Never cared for it." "Well," he said, turning his computer screen toward me, "Melanie does. And you're going to want to see this." On her Facebook page was a brand new post, a photo of her, Richard, and Olivia smiling in an expensive-looking restaurant. The caption read, "So blessed to be surrounded by love as we join our families together. Richard has officially proposed. Wedding planning for us, after we finish with Olivia's, of course. Engaged, ring sparkles." I froze. My divorce wasn't even finalized, and there she was, announcing her engagement to the man she destroyed our marriage for. And what gutted me even more was seeing Olivia in that photo, celebrating it as if nothing had happened. In the comments, Olivia had written, "So happy for you both. Can't wait to celebrate 2 weddings this year." I felt like the biggest fool alive. I was still waking up every morning with a knot in my stomach, barely able to drag myself through the day, while they were already playing happy family, planning parties and trips. And it didn't stop there. Another post showed Richard helping Olivia with her own wedding preparations. In the picture, he was smiling, paying a vendor. Olivia had captioned it, "So grateful for my extra dad." That was it, the final straw. A cold clarity washed over me. I turned to Hector and said without hesitation, "I want to change my will. Melanie gets nothing beyond what the law forces me to give her. And I want Olivia and Zoe removed as beneficiaries." Hector raised an eyebrow. "Are you absolutely sure? That's a major decision." "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," I told him. "They made their choice. Now I'm making mine." That night, back at home, I got a call from Eason. His voice was low, broken. He told me he had broken off the engagement with Olivia after discovering messages between her and Melanie. They had been plotting ways to manipulate me into paying for the wedding, going so far as to rope in mutual friends to pressure me. "You were right about her," he said quietly. "I'm so sorry, sir. I thought you should know." I listened, a knot tightening in my chest. I felt sorry for him. He was a good man who, like me, had put his trust in someone who didn't deserve it. At least he had gotten out before it was too late. A A couple of days later, I got another call, this time from Zoe. She was crying so hard she could barely speak. Between sobs, she told me she had just found out about Melanie and Richard's engagement. Through Facebook, like any stranger. I wasn't even told, she choked out. When I asked Mom how she could get engaged when you two aren't even divorced yet, she told me I needed to grow up and accept reality. And Olivia, she just sided with her, saying I was being dramatic. Listening to her, I felt a swirl of emotions. For a moment, I thought maybe Zoe was finally beginning to see things for what they were. But then she said the words that shattered that thought. I don't understand why you can't just work things out. Yes, Mom made a mistake, but I cut her off, my voice sharp. 15 months isn't a mistake, Zoe. Covering for her day after day wasn't a mistake either. Those were choices. Choices you all made. I know, Dad, she said quickly, desperate. I know. I'm not defending her or myself. I miss how things used to be. I shook my head, my heart heavy. Things were never what you thought they were, Zoe. It was all a lie. There was a long silence on the line before she asked, her voice trembling. What do you mean you're done? I mean, I'm moving on with my life, I said firmly. Without you. Zoe sobbed harder. Dad, please. I know I messed up. I know I ruined everything. But I'm trying to change. It's too late, I told her. Today, I changed my will. You and Olivia are out. The line went silent. Finally, she whispered, You what? You heard me, I said cold and steady. It's signed. Everything now goes to my brother. Dad, that's not fair. You can't just. Yes, I can. I cut her off. And I did. You all made your choices. Now I've made mine. And I hung up. Surprisingly, I didn't feel guilt. What I felt was light, lighter than I had in months, like a massive weight had finally been lifted off my shoulders. The very next day, everything blew up. Olivia unleashed a barrage of furious messages, calling me bitter, vindictive, and cruel. She accused me of tearing the family apart and of being too stubborn to forgive. Reading her words was like watching her twist the knife deeper, as if I hadn't already been gutted by her betrayal. Melanie, on the other hand, had her lawyer reach out to Hector, accusing me of retaliatory actions because of the will change. She painted herself as the victim, claiming I was being unreasonable. The irony was almost laughable. Even some mutual friends reached out, urging me to reconsider. They spoke about reconciliation for the sake of the family and tossed around tired phrases like, she's still the mother of your children, and blood is thicker than water. I let them talk. I didn't respond to a single one. That night, for the first time in months, I slept. Deeply. No tossing, no turning, no waking up with that crushing weight on my chest. Just pure, undisturbed rest. And in that silence, I realized something that had been slowly forming in the back of my mind. The family I thought I had never truly existed. It was an illusion, a carefully constructed facade built on secrets and lies. 5 months have passed since the day everything fell apart, and I can finally summarize where I stand. The divorce was finalized. Thanks to Hector's strategy and the evidence I gathered, Melanie didn't walk away with anywhere near what she had hoped for. She got some cash and her car, but she lost the house and had no claim over my retirement savings. 2 weeks after the divorce was signed, she married Richard in a flashy ceremony. Nobody was surprised. As for me, I sold the house. I couldn't stay in a place haunted by both good and painful memories. I bought something smaller, simpler, but mine, closer to work, in a neighborhood where nobody knew me as Melanie's husband. It wasn't luxurious, but felt clean, unburdened. The day after Zoe learned about the will change, she showed up at my door in tears, begging me to reconsider. She swore she would do whatever it took to make things right. I listened quietly and then told her calmly, I appreciate your words, but my decision is final. Her face changed in an instant. The sorrow hardened into something cold. So that's it? 30 years of family, just tossed in the trash. I looked her dead in the eyes. I didn't destroy this family, Zoe. You did, when you chose to lie to me day after day. She left, slamming the door behind her. I haven't seen her since. From what I've heard, she moved in with Melanie and Richard, playing happy family in their new household. Sometime later, word reached me that Olivia had gone through with her wedding. I didn't get an invitation, of course, not that I would have gone, but hearing about it still stung, if only for a moment. What hit me harder wasn't the wedding itself, but who walked her down the aisle. It wasn't me. It wasn't even her uncle, my brother. It was Richard, the same man who destroyed my marriage, the same man who had been sleeping with my wife behind my back. Olivia chose him to give her away. When I first heard it, it felt like someone had sucker punched me in the chest. But after a few minutes, something strange happened. The pain dulled. I realized it didn't matter anymore. Not really, because at that point, I had already started letting go of the illusion that I still had daughters in the way I once thought. Cutting toxic people out of your life, even if they share your blood, hurts like hell at first. But over time, it brings a freedom you can't describe. The fog starts to lift. You breathe easier. You think clearer. You stop carrying weights that were never yours to carry in the first place. In fact, I had already begun moving forward in ways I never thought I could. For the past couple of months, I've been seeing someone. Let's call her Jess. I met her at a backyard barbecue hosted by some mutual friends. She's divorced too, so she understands what it's like to live with scars left behind by betrayal. We're taking it slow, no rushing, no pretending it's perfect. But I can't deny it. She makes me feel good. Really good. The best part is that I told her my whole story from the very beginning. Every ugly detail. And not once did she judge me for cutting ties with Olivia and Zoe. She understood in a way most people can't, because her ex-husband cheated on her with her own sister. She knows firsthand what family betrayal feels like. Do I miss Olivia and Zoe? Sometimes. Usually when I see other dads out having dinner with their grown daughters, or when I hear a song that they used to love, or when their birthdays roll around. But the truth is, what I miss isn't them as they are now. What I miss is the idea of who I thought they were. The daughters I believed I had. The ones who valued honesty, loyalty, family. That version of them never really existed. Not long ago, I ran into Eason at a sports bar. He looked lighter somehow, like a man who had shed a heavy burden. He had a new girlfriend, a new outlook on life. Over a couple of beers, he admitted something to me. Olivia reached out to me recently, he said. She told me she made a mistake, that she wanted another chance. He shook his head and laughed bitterly. But I turned her down. You were right, sir. You taught me something I'll never forget. To respect myself enough not to let someone treat me like I'm worth nothing. Those words hit me harder than I expected. For the first time in a long time, I felt like something good had come out of all this wreckage. Just last week, I finalized my new will with Hector's help. Most of what I own is now set to go to my brother and his kids, the people who stood by me through all of this without wavering. On top of that, I set up a small scholarship fund at the local community college for students studying construction management. I figured, at least this way, I could leave something behind for people who truly value the opportunity to work hard and build something real. Jess and I have even started talking about moving in together next year. There's no rush, no pressure, but for the first time in what feels like forever, I can see a future that actually makes sense. She makes me laugh. She challenges me when I need it. And most importantly, she isn't tied to a family that betrayed me. That alone feels like a huge step up. People still ask me if I regret cutting Olivia and Zoe out of my life. They parrot the same cliches, but they're your daughters, or family is forever. My answer is always the same. Family isn't just about blood. Real family is built on trust, respect, and loyalty. And they show me they had none of those things for me. Maybe someday, one of them will truly understand what they did and come back with a real apology, one without excuses, without finger-pointing, without trying to shift the blame. Maybe, but I'm not holding my breath. Waiting for that would be like waiting for pigs to fly. What I've learned through all of this is simple. I can't control what others choose to do. I can only control how I respond. Melanie chose to cheat. Olivia and Zoe chose to cover for her and lie to me day after day. And I chose to cut them out of my life. The most devastating part wasn't even the infidelity itself, though that ripped me apart. The deepest wound was realizing that my own daughters, whom I gave everything for, could look me in the eyes, smile, and lie without hesitation, all to help their mother destroy me. But here's the thing. Once you accept that the people you loved weren't who you thought they were, you can finally start to build a life that's real. A life without masks. A life surrounded by people who actually care about you. And that's where I am now. Better than I ever imagined I'd be. Today, when I look back, I see everything differently. For years, I lived believing in a family that never really existed. What I thought was a foundation of love and loyalty was actually built on secrets and lies. It wasn't until the truth exploded in my face that I finally understood how fragile it all was. Losing Melanie doesn't hurt anymore. She made her choice the moment she decided to give herself to another man. What cut the deepest was Olivia and Zoe. They were my pride, the people I sacrificed day and night for. And yet, when it came down to it, they chose to protect a lie rather than be honest with me. That wound, that's the one that takes the longest to heal. But here's what I've learned. Holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I don't need their forgiveness or their excuses to move forward. What I need is to keep my dignity intact and build a life that's actually real. And now, with Jess by my side, I feel like I've been given a second chance. We're not trying to replace what was lost. We're building something new, something honest, something free of betrayal. She understands my scars because she carries her own. Together, we're learning to walk forward slowly, carefully, with no illusions and no fake expectations. Do I still think of Olivia and Zoe? Yes, sometimes. Not because I miss who they are now, but because I miss the idea of who I thought they were. But I've come to accept that the daughters I imagined, the ones who valued truth, loyalty, and family, never really existed. And while that realization hurts, it also sets me free. Today, my life is simpler, smaller maybe, but it's real. And I'd take this honest life over a family built on betrayal any day. Because in the end, what truly matters isn't who shares your blood. It's who walks beside you with loyalty, with respect, and with truth. And that's the life I'm finally living. Remember, if you enjoy my videos, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.